It's the Staff and Draft Podcast. I'm Mike Stevens. This is Rachel Dory. We are back in our hard launch era, in that we are in a studio. We have lights. We have mics. It's fantastic. Rachel, crazy weekend of hockey transpired, and before we get started, actually, because a little peek behind the scenes, we had about a 3-minute false start. We recorded for 3 minutes, and Rachel's recording stops. So we're doing this again, so it's almost like deja vu. But I will switch it up. The NHL schedule is really annoying. And it reminded me, just as I said, a crazy weekend of hockey, because on Saturday, we had 15 games.
Which is so cool.
Which was awesome. Sunday, we had 2. Today, I believe we have 1, which is Monday. We're recording this on Monday. Then tomorrow, on Tuesday, we have 16.
So, it's almost like the NHL is trying to do their NFL, which is like every team is going to play on Tuesday. And they're going to have staggered starts, and we're having a red zone. Which
is great.
I'm never going to tear that down, because I think that's a great idea. Objectively speaking, though, like there are days of the week, Fridays comes to mind immediately, Sundays as well, where there are like 1 or 2 games. And if you want to stay relevant, you kind of have to pick a lane, right? You either have to go the NFL route, which is like, we own Sundays, or college football, we own Saturdays, or you need to remain consistent. Like, it's pretty rare in the NBA that there's 2 games. So I think maybe the NHL needs to go sort of that direction. The MLB is like completely different, because they play 162 games. It's not the same. But the NBA, like, it's rare you'll have a night where there's 1 game. And so I think maybe the NHL, even on a Friday night, what's wrong with Friday night hockey? Right? You're out, you're pre-gaming for whatever you're going to do. Like, you're going out with the boys.
All of your fans are nerds. They don't have plans on Friday night. Like, they're like me, who stay in and watch, Like, who cares? But the thing that annoys me is, like, for fantasy hockey.
Oh, your lineups got all hot and bothered.
Your lineups get destroyed because, and I'm 2-0. I'm a big deal in our league right now.
Make him a GM. Let's go.
I'm killing it. I can basically run an NHL team by myself. I mean, let's be real. That's kind of what it is. You can run a fantasy hockey team. You can run.
Well, let's see. Team. Will you cover up bad behavior?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my philosophy is, if it happens off the ice, it doesn't matter. That's my philosophy.
It's a great way to run.
You can quote me on that. But like for fantasy hockey, which is the rise of fantasy football. Like, there's so many things that go in football's favor to grow the sport, but fantasy football is huge, because I didn't really become like a hardcore NFL fan until I started playing fantasy in grade 10. That's where it forced me to learn literally the names of third string wide receivers on the Tennessee Titans. Like, that's where it gets you invested. And fantasy hockey is growing, and that's good for the sport. It's not good when for example, like on my team, I had to leave Dylan Cousins, Johnny Gaudreau, and Claude Giroux all on my bench on Saturday, because there were so many games being played, I didn't have spots for them in my lineup. That's not good. Right.
What if you did something like you have 8 games on Saturday, which you should, like, the most games, like, every team should play either Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday, or Friday and Sunday. Something like that.
Yeah.
I think would be, like, an interesting way. You could start games at noon, because nobody's working, and you just go from noon to, like, your last game. Sorry, San Jose, your last game is not 10:30. It's 9:30 on Saturday nights, because you want the most fans to be able to watch the most hockey. You want to keep them grabbed. And then if the game ends 9:30 to 12, we'll still have time to, like, go out or, like, whatever after. Your pregame is effectively that, like, 8:30 or 9:30 start. Something like that I think could be interesting. But fantasy, you mentioned fantasy sports, right? This is the first year where I'm doing fantasy football. I'm in 3 different leagues. In the one league, they only allowed me in if I promised not to use my model. It's the only league I've suffered a loss in. I'm so upset. Like, I was 18-0 going into this week. Or no, I was 18-0.
Did you go like daily? Like,
I'm in 3 leagues, week 6, now we're on week 7.
Yeah, okay.
So I was 17-1, because I had 1 week 4, I think, loss. And then I was fretting, this week, because the guy I had Bijan Robinson as his running back, and Bijan's been putting up.
But he didn't do anything this week.
So many points, so I was fretting, and then all of a sudden with no injury designation, and I'm not happy about this because I hammered Bijan receiving props.
He just stayed on the sidelines the whole game, basically. He played 7 snaps, I think.
It came out that he was sick, and it's like, that's supposed to be in the designation. So I ended up winning the matchup because Bijan was sick.
I ended up winning my fantasy hockey matchup just because I'm the greatest that's ever lived. That's just what it is. It just wreaks havoc on it. Like, why can't, you know that meme where it's like, it's the mother talking to the kid where it's like, why can't you be normal? And then the kid's just screaming like at her back. It's like that game. Like, why can't you be normal? Why can't you be like the NBA where they have like an even amount of games on every day and it's possible to set a lineup, or it's possible to, and like the game tonight, I believe it's like the Habs and like the Wild or something. It's only available on NHL Network. It's not available anywhere else. It's an NHL Network exclusive, I believe.
Okay, so that doesn't count for Canada.
So it's never been harder to watch. Like, we live in a world where you are able to watch anything at any time on your fingertips. If I wanted to watch, like a lost episode from a British remake of a 1960s American show, I can find it on the internet and watch it right now. But you can't. But like the NHL is like, oh, it's gonna be difficult. We're gonna make it as difficult as possible to watch this league.
So I have kind of like an idea.
Hit me.
/ question. So at the if we're gonna be honest, the MLS has passed the NHL, especially with Lionel Messi now, right? One of the reasons that the MLS has passed the NHL is the Apple TV deal. And what the Apple TV deal is a worldwide streaming deal. So that you still have rights with broadcast partners, so like ESPN, ABC, whatever, still exists, but every single game is on an Apple TV platform, and it's globally. There are no blackouts. So for highlights, there are no blackouts. So people can tweet out highlights. There are no blackouts. Every game, regardless of whether it's on a rights holder or not. So like Toronto FC has some games on TSN. But regardless of whether or not the game is on TSN, it's going to be available after the fact on Apple TV, and you can always watch it on Apple TV. I wonder if the NHL looks at that and says, is this a way to go about it? Because it makes it available in Sweden, it makes it available in Australia, China, where they're trying to grow the game. And you can watch it after the fact, and it's not a nightmare to do it. You don't have to worry about various rights holders. I wonder if the NHL could do something like that, where it makes it more accessible, and Apple has a huge say in when start times are. So if they can work in conjunction with ESPN, TNT, like that kind of thing, and we have no blackouts, I think that will help with highlights online and getting highlights to be more easily distributed, as well as making the game more accessible so that like there are no blackouts. There was a Sens fan who messaged me and was like, hey, do you know where I can watch the game? Because they were traveling and there was a blackout in their area. And it's like, it shouldn't be that hard to be a fan of your team. If you are not a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens in Canada, it is nearly impossible to find your team if you're traveling because of blackouts. And it just shouldn't be that way. Even
like Leafs fans, like they're regional blackouts. They're games that are only on Sportsnet Ontario or whatever, like, just for that night. And if you, and unless you have the, like a Sportsnet Now package or something, like those are blacked out for you. It's ridiculous. What they should do at least is teams are starting to, at least in the States, create their own. What the Golden Knights have done, they had like Golden Knights TV or whatever.
The Leafs had Leafs TV.
Yeah, they didn't. They had like replays of games on it.
But what I'm saying is they had their own network.
No, they shut it down.
Yeah, Richard Petty built up NBA TV Canada. Like that was his baby.
Yeah.
Right? NHL Network was built by John Shannon. He also built up Hockey Night in Canada. Like I know he gets chirped a ton, but we straight up wouldn't have NHL Network, Hockey Night in Canada, like anything like that if it weren't for John Shannon. So like maybe on TV, like people don't like his opinions, but in terms of actually producing TV, he's a genius.
My favorite thing about John Shannon is if I want to get breaking news on Twitter 5 minutes after it's already been broken, I go to John Shannon. John Shannon is great at Elliot Friedman will break a trade, and there will be 5 minutes of reaction, and then John Shannon will tweet, breaking, this trade just happened, and be like, yeah.
I wonder if he tweets it after the trade call has actually been placed versus Elliot, who I know tweets it while the trade call's taking place. I wonder if that's a thing.
It's just very, but it's not just trades. It'll be like any sort of announcement from the league, anything. If you live your life on a 5-minute delay, John Shannon's your breaking news insider. Everyone else, it's very funny. But speaking of OGs here, Justin Holl. We have a new king in the NHL.
He's a king.
And that is Justin Holl right now is the NHL's plus-minus king. He's their plus-minus leader. Now, Justin Holl is an enigma of sorts. He's a player whose underlying numbers, for the nerds, Rachel, they always look really good. But when you watch him on the ice, not so much. But this year, Justin Holl Justin Holl is pulling what I like to call a reverse Justin Holl, which is he's on the ice for a lot of goals for, not a ton against. Whereas last year in the playoffs, despite being healthy scratch, I believe for three games in total, Justin Holl was on the ice for 75% of all goals against, or all the Leafs goals against in the playoffs, which wasn't great. But now he's thriving.
Yeah, I think, okay, so plus minus, this is a great way to just talk about why plus minus is, it's a bad stat on a game-to-game basis. Over the course of a season, that's enough.
It can tell you trends, I would say.
That's enough of a sample size over the course of a season. If somebody is a minus 42, they're bad. There's no, Nick Lidstrom over his career was a plus 437. Yeah. That's unassailable. You're not arguing that.
But for example, Phil Kessel in the Toronto Maple Leaf days, he was performing great, but he was always a minus 20 because A, the team was bad, and B, he was playing the highest leverage minutes against the best players. So naturally, you were gonna wind up. If you're on a tough team, you're gonna wind up with more goals going in than out.
Exactly. So when
Phil Kessel's not a bad player. He's actually the best player that's ever played the game, in my opinion.
So Connor Bedard is probably not going to finish a plus player this year. That does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that Connor Bedard is.
He's definitively a bust. That's what that means.
And so Justin Holl is in Detroit now. It's a bad contract. We've already talked about that. We've litigated that.
He's a healthy scratch this year already. The fact that he's the plus minus leader while being a healthy scratch.
So I would have told you that a pairing of Ben Sherratt and Justin Holl was thriving in the first 2 weeks of the season and not tell you anything else about the Detroit Red Wings, what would you have said?
I would have said, wake me up from this horrible dream that I'm having. That's what I would have said.
And instead, I have an article out about Alex DeBrincat and the scorching start that he's had. And you know what? A player going to their hometown, choosing what's best for them.
Yes.
Ottawa Senators fans, more than entitled to boo Alex DeBrincat because they can feel slighted. That's fine. But to inherently have an issue with a player saying, I want to go home because it's what's best for my family. Jacob Trouba saying, I need to go live in the United States.
That's where my girlfriend is doing her residency. That's where she is eligible to practice medicine. So I need to go to the United States.
To contribute to society in an actually meaningful way. Because despite what anyone thinks, just because you make millions of dollars playing sport, you are not contributing to society in a meaningful way. We're talking about, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif retired as an NFL football player to be a pediatric doctor. That's contributing. And so when a player says, I need to go because I need to do what's best for my wife, what's best for my family, any case, I don't have any issue with that. Johnny Gaudreau saying, I don't want to stay in Calgary because it's so far from my home.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that, and I don't think...
There was a great example, sorry to interrupt, there's a great example of, there's a whole article in The Athletic by Murat Ates about Pierre-Luc Dubois, how he forced his way out of two teams. And look, I will fully take responsibility for it. I criticized him a lot over that, because that's just kind of how we are, that's how we're wired. And his wasn't even a family thing. His was I have one career. and I only have so many years of being viable to contribute on, to do the thing that I've worked my whole life for. I only have so many years to be able to do that, and I don't want to waste any of them. So that's why he was like, oh, in Columbus, I saw that team going nowhere, I needed to get out. Then he went to Winnipeg, I saw that team going nowhere, I'm not going to waste time, in an organization. I need to go somewhere. He's in LA and he's happy. And people can criticize him for that. I certainly did until, at least I did this, but it's taking, it's taking back your power as a worker.
Yeah, and I think that they should be commended for that because you're kind of breaking the norm of hockey culture, which is fall in line, do what you say, put on the jersey, XYZ, and you know what? Pierre-Luc Dubois, we see this happen with RFAs all the time. Teams squeeze them. Trevor Zegras, Jamie Drysdale being paid far less than they're worth because Pat Verbeek used the lack of arbitration to his advantage, and he squeezed them. So when Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale are eligible for unrestricted free agency, they can then use...
They're not taking discounts.
...their side of the CBA, which is, everyone... When Austin Matthews signed his deal, everyone was like, oh, look, Nathan McKinnon took whatever, or whoever took this. Oh, that's their choice. Austin Matthews doesn't have to do that. And Austin Matthews, if he were playing for a team not named the Toronto Maple Leafs, would be doing the same thing. And frankly, that is what players should be doing. Now, should Toronto have squeezed him when he was an RFA? Yes, they absolutely should.
Oh, sorry, yes, when he was an RFA, sorry, yes.
But now that he's a UFA, he is more than entitled to get his bag. William Nylander is a fantastic case study in this. Kyle Dubas and Lou Lamoriello squeezed him big time to the point where he's making $6.96 this year. So when William Nylander says, I'm going to be an unrestricted free agent, I want my bag, he's entitled to do that, and he shouldn't be villainized for doing that.
The biggest example I can think of that is PK Subban. He went, okay, you don't have the money to pay me right now. You're not going to pay me right now, so I will take a bridge deal, 2 years, 2.5 or whatever. But when I become when this ends, I am not taking a discount. You better pay me. And they ended up doing it. He got $9 million, which was 13% of the cap at the time. That is equivalent to Eric Carlson's deal right now. He was like, listen, sure, you want to use the fact that I'm an RFA and you can squeeze me and keep me out for the whole year and whatever. That's fine. I will, and you know what? I will concede. I will take far less than what I'm worth for 2 years. But when I come up, you better back that Brinks truck up for me. If I'm worth it, which he was, he won a Norris, then you better pay me. And
Jeff Molson held true on that.
Yeah, and then trade him.
Well, and you look at this as RFAs versus UFAs. Pat Verbeek using the CBA to his advantage, good on him. Pierre-Luc Dubois using the CBA to his advantage, good on him. The Leafs not using the CBA to their advantage when they could have, bad on them.
Yes.
Don't villainize. You can villainize players for trying to push it when they don't have the advantage, but I don't think it's fair to say, John Tavares leaving.
That is probably the biggest case study. He broke the mold in that regard, and he got so much hate for it.
If you told me, so I've worked for teams, right? And
this is news to me. I've never dropping this bomb on me right now.
I've worked for teams, right? And I'm not going to use.
To me.
I'm not going to use hockey as an example because there's a very obvious where would I want to work situation. Right, I've been pretty obvious about saying, I'm willing to work for basically 2 teams right now.
Yeah.
Let's go soccer.
The Arizona Coyotes. And the Philadelphia Flyers. No.
I might actually work for the Flyers.
That'd be
I
fun.
like what they're building.
Yeah.
But let's go soccer, right? There's a difference between if any team but Bayern called versus if Bayern called. I want $500,000, let's just say, if I'm a whatever, right? Because a lead data analyst for those teams makes the equivalent of 500,000 Canadian dollars every year.
I knew I should have. I knew I should have not dropped math as quick as I could in high school. What am I doing?
So let's say some random team, even better, some Saudi team, oil money, says we'll pay you $3 million a year to come work for us. Because that is actually what's happening right now. They're offering the sun and the moon to data people. because they have that money. And
they offered $1 billion to was it Mbappe or
Lionel Messi, 1.3 billion.
They also no. They
oh
offered,
yeah, 1.1 to Mbappe.
Yeah.
And Mbappe was like, no, and this is a great example because Mbappe wanted to stay at Paris, right? You are willing to take less for a place you truly want to be. If Bayern Munich said, we will pay you 200,000 euros, and you have an offer for $3 million in Saudi, I'm still taking the Bayern Munich offer for like a litany of reasons. But using Kylian Mbappe is a great example. He was offered over $1 billion to go play in Saudi Arabia. And you know what? That's life-changing money. Like, it truly is. But Kylian Mbappe said it's more important for me to play at home and play for a team that I truly want to play for than to make $3 billion. I'm already making hundreds of millions. I don't need to make $3 billion. It's not that bad. Lionel Messi still makes $1 billion in the U.S., but it was more important for his family that he not play in the Middle East. And so when you look at that, you shouldn't villainize players for saying, this is where I want to play. That's if I got angry at Mike because Mike said, I want to go work at a different company and it's going to be better for me, my mental health, my stability. If I get mad at Mike for that, what kind of friend am I?
Bad friend.
Bad friend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's maybe, at least on this podcast, we are not going to lionize and villainize players for using their rights that they fought for in the CBA.
Speaking of villainized players, back to Justin Holl. That's the NHL's plus-minus leader. It's a great sort of case study in explaining how to use plus-minus, right? Because it is a stat that is taken out of context, perhaps more than any other stat, and it is a stat that can tell trends over the long term, but needs to be taken with a grain of salt here or there. It's very rudimentary. Rachel, Justin Holl being the NHL's plus-minus leader, is that sustainable? What does that say about the stat in terms of how we use it?
Yeah, so I think what are his expected goals? Just as a because I think
55%, I believe.
Okay, so first of all, he's +9 through this five games. He's played 5 games now, so he's +9. And is +2 sustainable over a season? No, it's not.
No.
Not for anybody. It's not sustainable. But this is a great sort of way to kind of talk about this is he's only played 5 games. That is not enough of a sample size to make a complete judgment of a player, especially on a new team. Should it impact your judgment? Yes, it impacts my model. Justin Holl is now an above replacement level defender. Not by much, but he's an above replacement level defender, so it's had a positive impact. I think this is a great way to say that this stat will tell you he's on the ice for more goals for than against at even strength. That's pretty much all it says, right? But that's why I asked you about expected goals. Because I want to know, is he just getting excellent goaltending? Is he getting a high shooting percentage? Because
both of those things are correct, because his PDO is 125.2.
It's what?
His PDO is 125.2.
I can genuinely say...
I don't think I've ever seen a PDO that high. And PDO, again, for people who don't know, it's basically shooting percentage plus save percentage. It's supposed to say how good when a player is on the ice. How good is a player's shooting percentage? Like what's the shot luck that he's getting, and is he getting some saves? Because if a player is shooting the lights out at an unsustainable rate, and also the goalie when he's on the ice is stopping 98% of the shots, naturally you're going to have a very high PDO, and naturally your stats are going to look great. That is exactly what is happening with Justin Holl. And
just so we're clear, like the appropriate PDO, the sustainable PDO, is considered to be 100. 106
is like absurd.
Yeah, so 125 simply will not continue.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen a PDO that high before. I don't think I have.
When I checked yesterday, his on-ice save percentage was 97. So he is on the goalie's save percentage when Justin Holl's on the ice is 970. That's not going to sustain itself.
And do we think that Justin Holl's mere presence on the ice is turning Ville Husso into the greatest goaltender of all time?
I'm going to go with no.
Okay.
But this is a great... Justin Holl, he's not as bad as he looked in Toronto. I think he was playing in situations where he probably shouldn't have been playing. He's now paired with Ben Sherrod, which is that entire situation is
absolutely insane,
mind-bending to me. But they're not playing in the situations that Justin Holl was playing in Toronto, right? Those situations are going to Moritz Seider. They're going to Jake Woolman. They're going to Jeff Petrie, who are, and even though Jeff Petrie is old, is still a better defenseman than Ben Sherrod and Justin Holl, and is being deployed as such, right? So, yes, that save percentage will not continue. His on-ice shooting percentage of nearly 30% will also not continue. And it's because, aptly pointed out by a Detroit Red Wings fan, when Ben Sherrod and Justin Holl are on the ice, the forward line they're on the ice with is Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, and Lucas Raymond, who are, Alex DeBrincat shooting 42% right now.
42.1.
That is not going to continue.
It will not. He will likely finish with a great amount of goals towards the end of the year.
Model has him projected now for 37.2 goals.
Look at that. That's fantastic. But he won't be scoring on half the shots, basically, that he's putting on net. It's not. That's not how it goes. But we look at Justin Holl and we go, maybe this is a great opportunity for us to look at plus minus as an opportunity, as a somewhat of a flawed stat, a stat that can be used properly when taken in with good context. But Justin Holl is not the most valuable even strength player in the league.
Yeah, this is, you know what, that's a great point. Is plus minus is not the useless stat that some people would have you believe. It really isn't, because over the context of somebody's season or career, it can be really telling.
It's a good long-term stat.
Nick Lidstrom, right, is probably the perfect example.
Yeah.
Nobody needs plus minus to tell you that Nick Lidstrom is one of the best defensemen in the history of the game. However, Nick Lidstrom's career plus minus is plus 437. But did I need, if I said a defenseman is plus 437 and that's why they're a good defenseman, or did I say this is an excellent defenseman and their plus minus is this, right? So you're using it as an augment situation. You're just using it as more information.
Yeah.
So Justin Holl is having a fantastic start to the season. He's got 4 assists. He's having a great start to the season, and he's a plus 9. Okay, but that's not the first stat we're talking about. It's also not the most important. If you were to tell me that Justin Holl was a plus 9, but his expected goals was 43%, then I would say, okay, well, his PDO is clearly more a contributing factor here than anything else. And there are some players where their expected goals is horrible, but they have a good plus minus because of either shooting percentage, and I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I can.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you one. So JT Miller, for example. Of
course this man went with JT Miller.
It always comes back to JT Miller. But JT Miller he's an enigma of a player because he ends every year with 80 points, and yet his defensive metrics and overall impact on the game is maybe not the best, but he still ends up with points. So it's the big, how valuable is he? Now, JT Miller, again, this is through 5 games.
So can I?
Before we get started, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you brought up he finishes the year with 80 points and this, that, and the other. So I was part of the Canucks when JT Miller finished with 99 points.
Yes.
And let's call it what it is. That was a fantastic offensive season for JT.
Absolutely. Phenomenal.
But there was a prominent person that I worked with who said, or not I worked with, there was a prominent person in hockey that I spoke to behind the scenes. I didn't work with them. That said that they wouldn't be comfortable paying JT more than $7.5 million a year because while he had an excellent offensive season, it probably wasn't going to repeat itself. And it hasn't. And
at least that level. Yeah.
He hasn't brought enough in a two-way perspective to make that person even believe that JT's a long-term center. And that was not my belief. That was their belief. Now, obviously, JT signed for over $8 million. And Rick Tocchet has really tried to get JT to play a two-way game. And I will say, through 5 games this season, I think that he looks a little bit better. Do I think he's going to be a long-term center? No, but I think that he is very clearly making strides towards being at least usable in a defensive role, and good for him, because
he was unusable a little while ago.
Completely unusable.
Maybe I think even just not to get off on a JT Miller tangent, but like I think a lot of it comes down to effort on the other side of the puck. Like it seems it's at least from the eye test it seemed that way. JT Miller like
the Kevin Bieksa clip on Hockey Night in Canada last year was so tough to watch.
Exactly. But like for example, when you talk about a player who like that's why you asked about Justin Holl's expected goals, given how great his plus minus is, just to see if he's just standing on the ice when good things are happening. Like JT Miller this year, a top 6 player. He has good deployment. Like he's starting in the offensive zone more than the defensive zone and all that. He's outscoring opponents at even strength, or 5-on-5 to be specific, 4-2. So there's when JT Miller's on the ice, the Canucks have scored 4 goals and they've allowed 2. So that's great.
Way to go, JT!
The thing about that though is that his expected goals this year is 41.36, which is brutal. It is he is relinquishing 59% of the expected goals.
So, do you know what that tells me?
What does that tell you?
Tells me that he owes Thatcher Demko a few dinners at Eliza.
Exactly. Yes. But you look at his plus minus, he's +4.
Right, so there, you know what? That's a great example, right? And this is not I just finished saying I think JT has made strides. Mm-hmm. You're not going to turn into a freaking selfie.
You're going to turn into Patrice Bergeron overnight.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But I think what fans should appreciate is that whether it's Justin Holl or JT Miller, there are strides being made, and especially in JT Miller's case, where that is an enormous contract for a very long time, there are strides being made, not only defensively for JT, but the numbers aren't there yet, but at least he's showing a commitment, right? I believe he's already blocked more shots per game this year than he has in any season in his career thus far. That's also fantastic. But that's a great example of, right now, he's still getting caved in defensively, and it's likely because Tocchet is deploying him in situations that he hasn't really been deployed in before. He's getting caved in from a chances perspective, and Thatcher Demko...
bailing him out.
But has Thatcher Demko basically just bailed out that entire team, with the exception of Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, who has to... I guess the surprise of some people, but certainly not to me, because you know how much I like Quinn Hughes.
Yes.
I mean, Quinn Hughes looks unbelievable to start the year. He is in the Norris conversation 5 games in, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Quinn Hughes, like, we talk about players who, have made a concerted impact to be better two-way. Like, Quinn Hughes' defensive game has come leaps and bounds. He's phenomenal in that regard.
And I think a lot of people look at, and maybe this is a great use case for JT, is Quinn Hughes 3-4 years ago, terrible defensively.
Yes.
And everyone was earmarked him, he's only an offensive defenseman, he can't get better. Quinn Hughes now, not arguably, he is a better defensive defenseman than Adam Fox. I will not say he's better than Cale Makar, because Cale Makar is Cale Makar. He's a better defensive defenseman, I think, than Roman Josi now.
Yes, definitely.
I think the only better two-way defensemen in the league, full stop, are Cale Makar and Charlie McAvoy.
Right?
But you look at Quinn Hughes, I don't know what his expected goals are, but that over a couple of seasons, Quinn Hughes has come a long way, and now people are starting to realize, whether they want to or not, that he is one of the league's best two-way defensemen. In a couple of years, and because JT is getting older, it's probably not going to be this way, but if JT can make steady improvements, maybe his expected goals are 52%, but if JT Miller's expected goals are 52%, and maybe he finishes the season as a plus 15, you can comfortably say JT Miller is a fine two-way player. He's not some defensive juggernaut, but he's not getting caved in via chances, via possession, and he's on for more goals for than he is against. At that point, you can comfortably say, if he's playing a matchup role, that he's a decent two-way player. But right now, he is winning the goals matchup, and it's more to do with his goalie than it is to do with him.
So for Quinn Hughes, just to reference that, he's 48% expected goals this year.
And he's playing
the hardest minutes he could possibly play.
He's averaging like 27 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He's playing more than Cale Makar so far, and that's crazy. And I honestly think it's because nobody watches the Canucks, and they haven't for a few years because, hey, I work for them. Like, why would you? But Quinn Hughes deserves his flowers, and I think that we're going to start to see the Vancouver Canucks play a little bit of a different style this year under Tocchet now that he's had a training camp.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great way to talk about kind of expected goals versus plus minus. Basically, if you have a poor expected goals and a really good plus minus, it means you're being bailed out by your goaltender.
Yeah. So Quinn Hughes has played 89 minutes on the dot of 5-on-5 ice time this year. So divide that by 5. That's basically 18 minutes at just 5-on-5 of ice time.
And he gets 5 minutes a game of power play time.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're at 24. And now
he's on the penalty kill.
He's the second unit PK guy behind Myers.
So you probably tack on at least 2 minutes there.
Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So now we're talking...
Like 27 minutes. Basically.
Yeah.
26, 27. Yeah.
That is... And he's thriving.
And he's almost at... he's almost at, even when it comes to... And in terms of scoring chances, he is at 52.37, I think. So you're out chancing the opponent. And when it comes to expected goals, he's basically even. Phenomenal player. So it's all about context, all about deployment. You have to really sort of, you have to focus on. You have to.
You can't
look
lose
at the
the
bigger
forest
picture.
for the tree.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have to look at the bigger picture. That's what we've talked about with analytics all the time. Is that you have to include it. You have to sort of meld the eye test in. It's analytics or salad. We've said that a million times.
So we've just talked about plus minus is the lettuce.
Yes.
Expected goals is the dressing.
Yeah. So I guess the whole salad would be NHL.com/edge, which launched I believe today on Monday.
I'm pretty excited about this, which is like I'm rarely excited about anything that the NHL launches. I took a gander at this site, and I kind of got the heads up that like this was coming about a month ago. Because I'm somebody who works with the NHL API, and this is a major kind of adjustment to the API, and for you nerds out there, the JSON file that gets plugged in to make the models. Mike just had he's like, what did she just say?
I don't know. If you looked at just the dead stare in my eyes,
So, I'm pretty excited about this. Have you looked at the site?
I've taken a look at it. So basically, what it is if you want to know. What Igor Shesterkin's save percentage is from shots that come from the left hash marks. This will tell you. If you want to know what, how quick or what the average velocity of Alex Ovechkin's snapshot from from the left point is.
His office.
From his office, it will tell you that. If you want to know, it's basically.
If you want to know how fast Connor McDavid could skate, it will tell you that. But the one thing I'm actually most interested in.
But it's very specific. It's like if you want to know how far Connor McDavid travels in terms of kilometers over the course of a game, it'll tell you that.
Because they have this tracking thing. And the one thing that I'm most looking forward to is gap control has been a huge thing. It gets talked about. Coaches, if I hear any word more than I hear gap control out of a defensive coach's mouth, I don't know what word it would be. Other than maybe block shots kind of thing.
Or gumption.
Toughness. Right, but gap control is huge. It's been impossible to quantify publicly. People use control zone entries and denials and things like that. But the reality is that doesn't tell you how close a player is. Now, and it really depends on if the NHL opts to make it public, because I know it's available behind the scenes, there is actually a statistic that will tell you how close a defenseman is to an attacking player as they come over the blue line. So you will actually be able to know how good a player's gap control is and if they are using it to their advantage or not. So now it's almost like ammo to say, this guy has a good gap. Look at where it is. So I think from a statistics perspective, we talk about how difficult it is to quantify defense. And it's been really hard to quantify defense.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm excited to dive in as somebody who builds models and look at how this is going to help me quantify not only team defense, but how good player defense is. Is Quinn Hughes really good because his gap control is really good? Is there a common denominator between the good gap control guys, and is it their skating? Cale McCarr, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm. Is every guy with elite gap control an elite skater too? So I wonder kind of the things I'm going to be able to do to quantify defense. But as somebody who writes stories, Mike, what does a stat site like this do for you? Like, what kind of information is it helpful for? Because I feel like it's helpful for you in a different way than it's helpful for nerds like me.
Well, it'll certainly help me sound smarter. And that's the main thing. No, it's great because it just allows, like, sort of, it can either prove or disprove hypotheses, you know? Like, if you're talking about a defensive pair and how they're just really struggling and how this is a big sort of, I would say, detriment to the success of a team, you're able, this type of site will give you at least, like, the tools to sort of see, okay, what's behind that struggle? What are they not doing right? What is an area of weakness for them? Could that potentially mean that, you know, a change in personnel, a change in deployment, a change in structure, something like that? Could that be different? It basically just allows less less general statements or less sort of hypothesizing and more just like being able to determine what is the cause of this or I'm trying to give a good example
maybe it's I remember a few years ago the James Reimer glove situation.
Yes.
Well, now you can see,
like, does he actually let in, like, does he actually have a glove problem? Or, like, you know, with like the Jake McCabe John Klingberg pairing, you know, like they're getting caved in. Like, why is that? Do opponents when it comes to dumping in do they
attack the line with speed more often?
Do they attack the right side because they know Klingberg's not good at retrievals? Do they know, like, that kind of thing? And you're able to put that sort of that informed information in there, and instead of just doing the old, like, well, he's bad defensively and that's why, you know.
So I think you brought up a great point, and that you can include it in your stories. What I will say is, a couple of years ago, Ian Tulloch and I think it was the second episode ever of this show, I laid out to Ian why the NHL had opted not to make the Sport Logic data public, and it was because it's dangerous. And part of the reason it's dangerous is because you can cherry pick with it. Now that we have this, you're going to see people who do not understand stats. I guarantee you Mike is going to do this at least one point, and I'm going to call him out on this podcast because it's a learning experience.
Me. Yeah.
You are going to see reporters use this stat site to cherry pick stats to fit their narrative. And that is dangerous. It is a drawback of making these stats public. But the positives that come from having more stats available surrounding your league and more information available means you're going to have better analysis from the people who do know what they're doing. And if you think about it, everyone uses expected goals. It might take a couple of years, but everyone is going to learn how to use this site properly. And when you're not using it properly, you're going to be called out. And so that's, instead of saying, my opinion on this has kind of evolved in that I believe these stats should be public. And instead of the NHL saying we're not going to make them public because we don't want them to be cherry-picked, now the point of emphasis should be, if you are cherry-picking the stats, we should be calling you out, and you need to be educating yourself on how to use these stats properly, because it's incumbent upon you to be telling the entire story. And so I think it's a fantastic thing that the NHL has made this site available. It's a really big positive. It reminds me a lot of what the NBA did with their stats site.
Yes.
And the NFL has a stats site as well. I think this is going to be it's a fantastic step in the right direction, and I'm really glad the NHL did it.
A rising tide raises all ships. So even if people start cherry picking with this, eventually that gets sorted out. The more information that is available to your sport, the more interest that comes to it, the more accessibility, the more people that find ways to, you know, like, to find jobs and ways to contribute to that sport. I think it's great. Now, before we head out, there is some unfortunate breaking news, I guess, like, that we just want to give. So we want to give it sort of our thoughts, and I don't want to say thoughts and prayers. We just want to give our sincere sympathies to the family of Rick Bowness, because Sunday evening, Judy Bowness, wife of Rick Bowness, who's the Winnipeg Jets head coach, she suffered a seizure and is currently in hospital undergoing further testing. So as a result, Rick Bowness is taking a leave of absence from the hockey club to take care of his wife, Scott Arneal, is going to be the interim head coach while he's away. So we just want to send our sincerest sympathies and well wishes to Rick and his wife and their family, because this is a difficult time. And
absolutely, yeah. I think Rick Botus is one of those people. I know somebody that works with him on a daily basis, and Rick knows that I'm close with this person. Rick Botus is somebody who, he's an old school coach who has evolved to be able to coach younger players. And what I mean by that is he's got that old school mentality, but he is one of the only coaches that will consistently check in with his players every single day. How are you doing? And he will coach each player differently depending on what is going to drive them to success. Like, when you're talking about somebody who's a genuinely kind, compassionate, when you talk about coaches, right? There are a few things you need to have, right? You need to have compassion. You need to be able to communicate. Obviously, you need all the hockey acumen and everything like that. But Rick Botus, similar to Paul Maurice, has absolutely nailed the human side of coaching, and that's why he's been in the game as long as he's had it. He's coached over 2,000 games. And Bruce Boudreau is very similar in that they understand people, and they can get people to perform for them because of that. And so I really hope that Rick Botus takes all the time he needs to take care of his wife. I hope nothing but the best for his wife. And in his absence, I hope the Winnipeg Jets play as hard for Scott O'Neill as they do for Rick Botus, because that's the best way you can keep a smile on Rick Botus's face. He's somebody who, in this sport, we'd be a lot better off if more coaches conducted themselves behind the scenes with their players the way that Rick Botus does. And Pierre-Luc Dubois talked about that.
Yeah.
He talked about how, like, this was nothing against Rick Botus, and he loved Rick Botus. And so, one of the great people in our game right now, and yeah, nothing but the best wishes for his wife Judy, and obviously for Rick and their entire family. That's really tough to hear.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we are going to head out. We will be back on Thursday with another lovely podcast here. Also, check out the hockey news for the THN Action Show, which is now going to 3 times a week. So Rachel and I are going to be seeing and talking to each other a lot, which is going to be great. So stay tuned for that. Rachel, anything to leave our listeners with before we head out?
Take care of your friends. Take care of yourself. And just enjoy life, honestly.
And Justin Holl for Norris.